What's up, y'all? It's Albert, aka That Guy in Tech, and I'm back with another video with Alchemy. And I'm super excited for today's video because we just recently launched our NFT API. And this is super exciting because we've heard the feedback from you, from the community, and everybody who's developing in Web3 today. Everyone wants to build using NFTs. So why not make that as easy as possible? Right now, we've released two public endpoints. The first one is Get NFTs, and that allows you to pass in an owner address, and we will return all the NFTs that owner address owns. And number two is Get NFT Metadata, which is an endpoint for you to actually query the information about where's the image stored, what URI is the image stored at, and what are the attributes and things like that, so that you can display it. And so in this video, I'm going to show you how to build an NFT Explorer application, which is going to be a pattern that you see in a lot of NFT related projects, including NFT marketplaces, NFT wallets, NFT games, ownership verification on social media, whatever it is, you name it, it will probably have something like this. So this is a very, very useful and important video for you to get acquainted in your NFT development journey. So enough talking, let's get into the code. All of the code that I'm going to be going through today is actually going to live in this repository at Alchemy platform/build your NFT Explorer. And this was actually originally made by our amazing developer advocate, Vito. And he actually also created a hosted version, so you can explore this yourself before you even dig into the code. So you know, there might be some of you out here who are not you know, coders, or maybe you're very new in your journey, you just want to play around and familiarize yourself. That's totally fine. So right here on the right hand side, you can see here there's a build your NFT explorer.vercel.app, and so if you click on that, then you can browse. And what we're going to build in the coding portion is a subset of this sample application. You can see here that it immediately pops you into this login where you can connect your MetaMask. I've already connected mine, so as soon as I clicked that, it fetched all the NFTs that I own at this wallet address. It's actually also multi-chain supported, which is awesome. So you can query across Ethereum mainnet, Polygon mainnet, and Polygon testnet, Polygon Mumbai testnet, and that's this one right here. So you can see I don't have any NFTs across these other chains, but I do have a bunch on Ethereum, and these are all the ones that pop up. So this is the profile page where it basically queries your profile. Oh, it looks like it is querying my Polygon one, so there's a little bit of a delay here, but this is the profile page where it queries the NFTs that I own in my profile. Then there's the Explore page right here, and you can see here there's a tab. So I'm going to click on this tab, and you can see this is an Explorer where you can explore any wallet addresses NFTs. So if I put in my wallet address, then I can click search on Ethereum mainnet, and that will, it should search for all of the NFTs that I own. So let's see what's going on here. Dev tools failed. Let's see. Let's refresh that real quick. There we go. Sometimes it lags a bit, but you know, it could be because I'm in a hotel and I have bad Wi-Fi. So if you have that, just make sure that you try it a couple times. But anyways, this is the Explorer page, and it shows the wallet address on Ethereum mainnet, and you can see it's the exact same set of NFTs that I had earlier. So what we're going to be building is a simplified version of what you're seeing here with all the wallet connect and everything. We're not going to go into all this other stuff. We're just going to show you the power of the Alchemy NFT API and how do you query it, how do you read the data so that you can build this Explorer page. And then from there, if you wanted to, you can fork this repo that Vito had started, and it has wallet connect, it has NFT API querying, it has all of these NFT cards and everything, and you can actually branch your project off of this repo. So that's what we're gonna do. Awesome, so we're here in my terminal. The first thing we want to do is go to my coding directory. This is where I keep all of my code. I don't know how you organize it, but just navigate there. And then what we wanna do is create a new React app. So if you don't already have that, then I recommend installing Create React App. So you can go here, and I'll drop a link about this in the description also. But basically, if you run this command npx create react app and then the name of your app, it generates boilerplate for a React app, and that's what we're going to use today for our project. So you can go here and set it up if you don't already have that set up. So let's run that npx create react app, and then let's call this the NFT API Explorer. So we're going to wait for that to run. And what this is going to do is it's going to generate a lot of boilerplate code, which is awesome for getting a project started, but there's actually a little bit too much and we don't need everything. So once this finishes, I'm going to go into that directory and I'm going to delete all the stuff that we don't need. And then throughout this video, I'm going to be referencing a repo that I've already set up with all the final code, so I can just copy and paste and explain it to you guys. And that way we don't have to type out every single line. That might take a little bit too long. So we can see here it finished. So let's go into my new repo, which is NFT API Explorer. Awesome. And then I'm going to open this up in my code editor. And I do have a shortcut for VS Code that allows me to do this from the terminal. But if you don't, you can Google that and set that up. So I am opening up my VS Code. All right, and then we'll do that update later. But you can see here we have our basic structure of the app, which is an index.js file. And this index.js file, all it does is really, it loads some CSS for the project. It does some reporting of web vitals for measuring performance. But the key thing is this app component. And this app component comes from .app, which we can find here in this file, app.js. And in this app.js file, we have a bunch of starter stuff where it loads a logo and then it has some text. So we can see this in action when we go to the terminal and we run npm. Actually, I'm going to do this in VS Code. You can have a terminal in VS Code, but depending on whatever editor you're using or what terminal you're using, you can feel free to do it however you want. But let me open up a terminal and then I'm going to run npm run. And it's npm start. And then that should run the local server. It's already running. Oh, I already have another one running. So let me close that one and cancel that. And then let's just redo that. So it should run on localhost 3000. So cool, we got the server running and then boom, localhost 3000. You can see that the logo for the React.js boilerplate is running. So we can delete a bunch of stuff actually, and we just want to start fresh. So we are not going to need the logo. We're not going to need the app.css, and we're not going to need any of this information right here. So we can refresh that, and you can see that it's returning nothing, so it's kind of upset. Let's just do a div for now. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so it's empty. And then some other things that we don't need are the report web vitals. We already deleted that, so let's just clear that out. We don't need tests right now. Ideally in your production app, you are testing, but we don't need tests right now for this demo. So let's delete that. We don't need the logo. Let's delete that. We don't need this test file. Let's delete that. Okay, cool. So that is our basic app structure. And then let's just make sure we're taking out the report web vitals here and simplifying the index.js. Okay, cool. So empty, we're good to go. Now the next thing we want to do is install Tailwind. So let's go to our terminal, and what Tailwind is a nice lightweight CSS library where you can actually just write your CSS inline, which I know not everybody loves, but again, it's really fast and easy, and you don't have to kind of set up all of the infrastructure. But when you are building your own production app, maybe you want to use this, maybe you don't. This is something that Vito introduced to me, so we'll just try it out. So you can see here, it's really easy to get started. We're just going to install our Tailwind. So npm install -d Tailwind CSS. And then we're going to initialize our configuration. So we have now created a configuration file called tailwind.config.js. It's empty right now, but the ones that we do want to make sure that we are applying our CSS to are JavaScript files and JSX files. So I already have this config defined right here. So we can copy and paste this in, but you can see the only change I've made here is all of the ones in our source folder that end with JavaScript, JSX, TypeScript, or a TSX should have the CSS applied. And then we're just using this font across the entire application. So that's our Tailwind config. And then the other thing we need to do is put this into our top level main CSS file, which for us is index.js. Index.css. So up here, we're gonna have to input these three. And then we are not going to use the default styling, so we can actually get rid of this stuff as well. So let's delete that. and then I will actually copy it over from my existing project. We are going to import some Rubik font, and then also have an overall Alchemy background. And that's pretty much all of the base styling we're going to do. So let's copy that over here in index.css. And then at this point, we should reload the project. We do have hot reload on, as you can see from our terminal, which we don't have running. So let's rerun the terminal. Oops. Where's my terminal? Oh, here we go. So we can reload this. So let's cross that out, and then let's do npm start once again, and then it should load with no problems, and then we're good to go on the tailwind. So because we had that new configuration file and the new CSS, we wanted to reload it from the start, but from now we should be able to just write our code and it should hot reload. Awesome. So after we get the tailwind, now we can actually start digging a little bit more into the code. And so at a high level, what we want to do is we want to create in our source folder 2 other folders to organize our code. Now the first one is going to be the components folder. And the components folder is going to hold one component that's very important in particular, which is the NFT card component. So let's do create a new file called nftcard.js. And that's where we're going to define how the NFT cards that look like this, how that's going to take shape. So that's NFT card. And then we're also going to have a new folder under source called pages. And you don't have to structure it the way I'm structuring it right now, but I like to split my code into parts so that it's kind of easier to organize over time. So under pages, we're going to create a new file called the explore page. So we'll just have explore.jsx. And explore is going to be the main page that we load from our app in app.js. Right now it's empty. We're going to load explore in here afterwards. Cool. And then before we finish up and actually start writing the code to implement these things, we're going to have one more folder under source, and that is the utils folder. And this isn't going to be visual the same way that components and pages are going to be rendered as visual DOM elements, but the utils folder is going to contain all of our functions that we want to call. And for this project, all we really need to call is the Alchemy NFT API. So we're going to call the fetchNFTs endpoints, and so let's just call it fetchNFTs in a JavaScript file. Now, this is going to contain all of the logic for fetching our NFTs, so we should implement this first. And the nice thing about having this in a separate function as well is that you know where to find your logic. You can actually write unit tests a little bit more clearly. So there are these kinds of like coding benefits, coding hygiene benefits. So let's start with fetchNFTs.js, implement the logic in here, and then we're going to go to our components and build our NFT card. Then we're going to go to our pages and build out the explore page so that actually uses the NFT card, which loads information that is queried from the fetchNFTs utils. And then finally, we're going to plug everything into our app.js and it will load. So it's going to be great. Let's try all of that out, okay? So going to fetchNFTs.js, we're going to implement 3 functions, okay? The first function, let me pull this up over here, is the get address NFTs, okay? So get address NFTs is the function in our app that is going to call the get NFTs endpoint at the Alchemy, on the Alchemy side. So let me walk through what the code is doing here. It's going to take in an owner address, an owner wallet address. It's going to take in a contract address that optionally, it could be an empty string or it could be a contract address. But if this is passed in, then that means we're going to filter the results of the owner's NFTs to just the NFTs that belong to a contract address. And I'll show you this visually later too. And then you can pass in optionally retry attempt, but this is something that's actually more internal. We're going to use this, we're going to call this function in a recursive way, and the way that we're calling it is, ignore this for a second, if we have an owner wallet address passed in, which we should, then we are going to try to query the get NFTs endpoint, and this endpoint is something that we're going to define in a moment. We're going to query the get NFTs endpoint with this owner address, and then if we have a contract address, then we will filter down to just those NFTs. If we don't, then we're just going to return all of the NFTs that this owner owns. And then if there are issues due to network or it's lagging or a bad server response for some reason, then we can try again, and we're going to add to this retry attempt when we recursively call, so that way by the time we hit 5 retry attempts, we will cut off the function and stop retrying. So that's what this function is doing. It's getting the owner addresses NFTs. Now, the way that our NFT is currently API is currently structured, we want to make an additional query to actually just fetch the metadata of the image URL, the attributes, and things like that. So that's where this second function comes in. And we'll copy this over. We're calling it get NFTs metadata. So get NFTs metadata will take in the NFT data that we are fetching from get address NFTs, and then it will go through one by one using the response that returns contract address and token ID, and then actually get the metadata. So you can see here, we're actually, we are in this map function looping over all of the NFT data that we had queried. And then what we're doing with each individual one is we're accessing the contract address and the token ID, and then calling a new endpoint called the get NFT metadata. That returns us a metadata object, and then we're going to parse the relevant parts of this metadata object, because there's a lot of stuff that's actually returned. We're only going to pick out the ones that we want to populate our NFT card. So you can see here we have an image URL that we're going to want to save. So that's either going to come from the metadata blob, or if the NFT that we're querying isn't supported by the ERC 721 standard, then this will actually be null. So in that case, we have a placeholder image. And then finally, we're going to return a bunch of fields here that are actually going to be used in the NFT cards. So that's this function. And then finally, we have one function that will call the get address NFTs, pass that data to get NFTs metadata, and then set state in our application later. So I'll show you what this means. It might look a little confusing as we're building it, but it'll make sense in a bit. So this is the fetch NFTs function, and this is the one that we actually want to export from this file. So let's do exports fetch NFTs, and then this is what we're going to be using in the explore page. So taking this line by line, fetch NFTs will take in an owner address, it will take in contract address, and then we'll also take this React hook function that we'll pass in later called set NFTs. So the responsibility of this function is to call the 2 previous functions that we had defined. The first one is get the address NFTs. Then once we get it, as long as we have non-zero array of NFTs, then we can query for the actual metadata. Once we get the metadata, then we only want to do the ones, look at the ones where the metadata was actually returned correctly and fulfilled, the request was fulfilled. And then we want to use the React hook to set the state. And then once that's done, then we actually have all the data that we need. So now we can focus on the front-end components. So that's what this file is doing. Let's save that. And then we'll go into the NFT card. So the NFT card is what actually displays this, right? So you can see here, we have an image in this NFT card. We have the name of the NFT. We actually have a link to Etherscan that shows the contract address that this NFT belongs to. We have the description of the NFT. We have the metadata attributes of this NFT, and that makes up the entire card. And then we're gonna fit a couple of cards on the page, depending on how many NFTs that they have. So let's look at what the code actually looks like. So get NFTs is, NFT card is going to be this component right here. Let me copy it in and then walk you through it. So it takes in a bunch of things that that you want to display on the NFT card. So we talked through this already: an image, NFT token ID, the address of the contract, and then the description, the attributes, things like that, and then it loads everything. So in here we have a bunch of inline CSS that works thanks to Tailwind. It has support for Flex and all of this stuff. And then this is the first important line. We have this image. That's where the image is loaded. So we have our image, and this is an image URL that's passed in. And then over here we have the token ID, and this is where you can see the ID of this contract. And then over here we have a link to the Etherscan address. And then over here we have a description. So if the description is populated, we'll show it. If it doesn't, then we will cancel it out. Sometimes the descriptions can be really long, so we cut it off at 200 characters here. And then finally, for each of the attributes, if there are any, for each of the attributes, we will display the attribute trait type and the attribute value. And that's what these items are. Cool, so that is the NFT card. Let's save that as well. And then in the explore.jsx file, this is where it's gonna all really come together. We have the fetch NFTs, and then we're gonna pass the data from the fetch NFTs into the NFT card. So let's take a look at that over here. I'm gonna copy this over. And so the first thing is we're gonna be using the use state React hooks. We're gonna have our NFT card component. We're gonna have the fetch NFTs logic from the utils file. And then we have all of the state that this component will manage. And then in here, it's roughly divided into two sections inside the explore component, explore page. We will have the header, which will actually show the top, the top input bars and this description of what this project is. And then we will have the actual section that displays the returned NFTs. So in this header function, we have our Alchemy NFT Explorer, and then the description. So this is an inspector to find NFTs by owner and contract address. And then we have our input boxes. So this is the first input box right here where you set an owner address. So insert your wallet address. And then over here, the second input box, you have a contract address. So this is where you can insert an NFT contract address. And it's totally fine to leave this one empty. It'll just be an empty string. And then you can see back in our fetch NFTs logic, if it is an empty string in the get address NFTs function, then we will just not use that to filter. So that's all good. And then finally we have our button. And for this button, when it's clicked, we call the fetch NFTs function that we had implemented, which actually hits the Alchemy backend. And then also we pass in this set NFTs React hook that we had started over here. And then that is how this explore component is going to be aware of the state update for the NFTs that are returned from the response API. And then that is pretty much the header section of the explore page. And then when we get that data that's returned from set NFTs, once that updates, then NFTs will be populated. And when that's populated, this section will update as well. And for each of those NFTs, we're going to map to one of our NFT cards that we had implemented. So I should fix that. That looks like a bug. Let's save that. And then that's the explore page. So you can see when we go to the React, the localhost where we're running our local server, localhost 3000 on this page, it's completely empty. And that's because we haven't actually used the explore page component that we just finished implementing right here. So in order to do that, we're gonna go back to our top level App.js. And you can see here we have our empty div. But what we wanna do is load the explore page. So we're gonna import explore, and let's just double check that we have actually exported it. And we have here, so it's default export Explorer. So go back here, we're gonna import Explore from components folder, and then we're gonna, oh sorry, it's not components. We're gonna export from pages, and then get the Explore component. And then all we have to do is replace our empty div, oops, deleted too much there, with our Explorer. And then once we refresh that, endpoint is not defined. Oh, we forgot a very important thing. This is when you'll have to have an Alchemy account handy because Alchemy is going to be the connection to the Ethereum blockchain. So this is not the way I would recommend you do it in production, but you can see here, sorry, let me just rewind here. In this file, we have this fetch query, this fetch request. And the first part of this fetch is actually an endpoint variable that we have not defined. But the endpoint variable is supposed to be your base URL to an RPC provider. So obviously we're going to be using an Alchemy APC, or an Alchemy RPC endpoint. So our endpoint is going to be a string that is that endpoint, and then it's going to use that to query the endpoints. So the way we do that, the way we get our API URL endpoint is we go to alchemy.com. If you haven't already signed up for an Alchemy account, go to alchemy.com, sign up for an account. It's completely free. Once you do that, you can go to your dashboard and you can see all of your applications. So, these are our internal applications. And then over here, I have a sample application where I'm going to be able to use the key for. So you can see I'm on mainnet, or let me just open this up. So you can see here, I'm on Ethereum mainnet. So the API key, when I click view key, is going to show an Ethereum mainnet API URL endpoint. So we're gonna copy that and then paste that into our endpoint variable. So that should fix that. And then once we go back here, you can see that it is loading correctly. And the amazing thing actually, and the really cool thing about using Alchemy is that you can have this really nice dashboard of all the requests coming in and out of your application, whether it's like read or you're executing a transaction, whatever it is. And you can see all the requests in the last 24 hours that have been made, the success rate, how fast the responses are coming in, which requests are getting blocked due to rate limits, all that pizzazz and information. So back on this application page, we can, for example, use my wallet address, insert that there, and then let's see if it works. So we're gonna hit the search button. It's gonna take a second to load the images because my internet is a little bit slow. But then you can see that it has the token ID. This is ID 42, this is ID 43. It has the description and it has all the attributes just like I showed you in the hosted version. So here are all of my NFTs. Crypto Coven, yeah. Okay, so what you don't see here is the Wallet Connect with the MetaMask support. And that's something that I'm going to leave as an exercise to you to implement if you want to try that out and use the WAGMI library or some other kind of React hook library to build support for that. So back here, we have pretty much finished our entire application. One thing that I do want to call out is that the API URL endpoint that I'm using in this variable is something that you do not want to commit to a GitHub repo. And that's because if someone else has your API URL, they can query your Alchemy app and use up all of your compute units, use up all of your rate limits, things like that, and then it would just be really messy for your application. Now you can always rotate your keys and create a new app and reconnect everything, but that's just really annoying. So just be careful about that. So I'm actually going to show you on our documentation page. If you go to docs.alchemy.com, we actually have our NFT API documentation right here. So if you click on that, there's a really nice write-up so that you can dig more into what our NFT API can be used for, and there's a quick start and everything. And then over here in the sidebar, you have get NFTs. That's the first endpoint that we queried. It takes in things like owner, page key, contract addresses filter, and an optional, like if you want to include metadata in that exact same request, there's a trade-off of it being slower, but it's an option. And then it returns the owned NFTs. It returns page key. If this person is a whale and has a ton of NFTs, you can paginate through multiple pages. Returns the total count and all of this stuff. And then the second endpoint is the get NFT metadata endpoint. And over here we have our parameters, our input parameters, contract address, the token ID that you want the metadata for, the token type, and then it returns all of the possible metadata that you could want about this NFT. So these are the full docs. Again, I'll leave these links in the description below. But yeah, really excited to see what you build, how you fork this, and go out there and create amazing applications for all the people who need to interact with their NFTs. If you have any questions, leave a comment below, or you can find us on Discord or Twitter, or you can email me, albert@alchemy.com, if you have any questions about these things, and I'm super happy to answer and help you out. So happy hacking. See you next time.